Hello, and welcome to the Black Ponder. I'm Neil Trotter. Today, we're talking about John Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath. Now, I really like books like these because they're controversial. Now, when I say controversial, I don't mean books that have been banned because of the content, language, violence, sexual explicitness, etc., or because they present themes that go against the status quo. I'm not really talking about that, although those type of things intrigue me as well, and I'm very interested in books that offer that to the table. But when I say controversial, I'm meaning more there's a large amount of people who really like the book, and then there's a large amount of people who really don't like the book. And that's what Grapes of Wrath is. You're gonna either really like this book or you're really not gonna like this book. And there's not too many people who are in between. I have a lot of friends and acquaintances and associates, if you will, and I've asked them, should I read The Grapes of Wrath? Is that something that will interest me? And they tell me, no, you shouldn't read that book. That book's pretty boring, actually. It's pretty boring. There are whole chapters where absolutely nothing happens. It's kind of overhyped. This is what they say. They say there's a lot of power and meaning behind the book, but not really. It's kind of a yawn fest, and the book is really long, and you shouldn't even waste your time. So for the longest time, for years, I've never really read The Grapes of Wrath. Not until recently. Then I came across a YouTube video, just randomly. I was just surfing the internet, going on YouTube, and I just came across this review of The Grapes of Wrath. It was actually more of a book discussion, and it was by this European booktuber. And I'll put the link down below because it's really good book discussion. It actually motivated me to read the book against all the recommendations I had not to read the book. This is because she talked about the meaning behind the book and how it kind of altered her perspective on things and the things that she learned. And it just, the way she presented her opinion of the book inspired me. She expressed how much meaning she acquired from reading the book, and that's really interesting to me. If a book has a lot of meaning behind it, that really starts turning the wheels in my brain, and I get really interested, and that's what the Black Ponder, this channel, is all about. So I'm like, okay, you know what, I'm gonna give this book a shot. I'm gonna go ahead and read this book. This person, she breaks it down pretty nicely. She's got me intrigued. I'm gonna go ahead and give this book a shot and see if it kind of interests me. So I went ahead and did that. Again, I put the link below because I think you should check it out if you're watching this video, because she presents some really good ideas and things that she felt the book was important for her. And I say that because what I'm going to talk about is not really the things that she's going to talk about. So you're going to get two very good perspectives. Well, she's a good perspective. Hopefully I will present a good one. I think I will. So by the way, I'm not going to spoil the book. I know some people will say it's impossible to spoil the book because it's so boring, nothing happens. What can you possibly say? But I think there are a few plot twists, some major plot twists, and I could easily spoil it. But I'm not going to do that. In the video I link below, she doesn't do it either. She does reveal some plot twists, but she gives you ample warning. She lets you know way in advance, so you can just stop the video. So don't worry about getting spoiled. If you want to check it out and you're like, oh, I don't want to get spoiled, don't worry about that. I'm just going to present some ideas for you to think about what the meaning of the book is to me. So really, what is the meaning behind The Grapes of Wrath? Really, I mean, that's kind of what I'm going to talk about, the meaning behind the book, because that's really what's most important in my mind and what interests me the most. What is the philosophy? What can we get out of this that'll make us better people? And that's why I really like this book, because it presents ideas and themes that we can reflect on, and it actually can make us better as people if we really think about it and take in consideration what John Steinbeck was trying to tell us about each other. Again, in the Black Philosopher, what we do is we just dive in the book and look at the quotes, and then based off the quotes, you can explore the meaning behind the book. I like doing that. The author presents ideas in the best way, more eloquently than I can. I just provide supplemental commentary, right? So let's dive in, shall we? So there's a part in the book where two people are kind of having an argument with each other. So much, not really that heated of an argument. They're just trying to come to terms with what's going on. There's a guy who's running a tractor, and tractors are more efficient when farming, and is getting a lot of people out of the farming business. Farmers that do it old school without tractors, they can't really farm anymore because they can't compete with people who have tractors. So let's explore the conversation of these two people, one who's using the tractor and one who's not using the tractor. Here's the person not using the tractor, right? He says, well, what are you doing this kind of work for? Get your own people. And the tractor guy says, $3 a day. I got damn sick of creeping for my dinner and not getting it. I got a wife and kids. We got to eat. $3 a day, and it comes every day. And here the guy without the tractor, that's right, the tenant said, but for your $3 a day, 15 or 20 families can't eat at all. Nearly 100 people have to go out and wander on the roads for your $3 a day. Is that right? And the tractor driver says, can't think like that. Got to think of my own kids. $3 a day, and it comes every day. Times are changing. The guy without the tractor continues. But let a man get property he doesn't see, or can't take time to get his fingers in, or can't be there to walk on it. Why then the property is a man. He can't do what he wants. He can't think what he wants. The property is the man, stronger than he is. And he is small, not big. Only his possessions are big. And he's the servant of his property. That is so too. The tractor driver continues. Thinking about stuff like that don't feed the kids. Get your $3 a day. Feed your kids. You got no call to worry about anybody's kids but your own. Then the guy without the tractor continues. Nearly 100 people on the road for your $3. Where will we go? And the idea presented in this dialogue is pretty much the central meaning or theme behind the book, in my opinion, which is when you start to worry about your own self and you start to just focus on you as an individual and your individual needs, and you're not only, the tractor driver is thinking about his family, but he's only thinking about his small circle of influence, and he's not really concerned about everybody else. Once you start getting into that type of thinking, all I gotta worry about is me, my wife, my kids, my house. I don't have time to worry about anybody else. That is a trap, and we get caught into it. And when that starts to happen, then really society can start to abuse us and take advantage of us. And that's kind of the downfall of man once he starts thinking in that type of mentality. Let's continue. So there's a character in this book. He's a pretty cool character. He's a former preacher, and he's struggling with his faith. His name is Casey. And this is one of the things he says when the family, the Jode family, the main family of this book, they ask him to say a prayer, and he's like, I'm a preacher, I don't pray no more. But they're like, hey, just say something. And this is what a part of what he says. And I got thinking, only it wasn't thinking. It was deeper down than thinking. I got thinking how we was holy when we was one thing, and Macon was holy when it was one thing. And it ain't only got unholy when one miserable little fella got the bit in his teeth and run off his own way, kicking and dragging and fighting. Fella like that busts the holiness. But when they're all working together, not one fella for another fella, but one fella kind of harnessed to the whole shebang. That's right, that's holy. And then I got thinking, I don't even know what I mean by holy. That's very powerful when you really think about it, because he's talking about the same thing that the two tenant farmers, one with the tractor, one without the tractor, was saying. He's saying, like, when we start to not think about, just doing things for our own benefit or just the benefit of people immediately directed with us, when we start doing things for the community as a whole or just for everybody, when we start doing things for the common good, and when I say common good, I mean the good of every person, in the world, or just in, everybody. When you start doing that, that's when it gets holy. And it can become detrimental when you only focus on doing things for you or your small circle of friends and family, and that's it, that's when the door opens for suffering of everybody, really. Let's continue. Small quote here. For the quality of owning freezes you forever into I, and cuts you off forever from the we. And it's true, when you start putting too much emphasis and focus on ownership, you start getting locked into that. It's all about me, it's all about myself, and anything that has to do with me, that's all I'm concerned with. And you get separated from the we. What about other people? What about the welfare of others? What benefit do they have? Are they actually getting hurt by what I'm doing? And oftentimes, when we focus on ourselves, our actions indirectly hurt other people, but we're not even focused on that because we're so focused on me, myself, and I. Let's keep going. In this dialogue, the protagonist's father, whose name they just call him Pa, is talking to another patriarch of a family. And this is how their conversation goes down. Paul demanded, well, what the hell am I gonna do? We out of money. One of my boys got a short job, but that won't feed us. I'm gonna go and take 20 cents. I got to. And the other guy says, yeah, you'll do that. And I'm a 2-bit man. You'll take my job for 20 cents, and then I'll get hungry, and I'll take my job back for 15. Yeah, you go right on and do her. Well, what the hell can I do? Paul demanded. I can't starve so you can get 2 bits, the other guy says. I don't know. I just don't know. It's bad enough to work 12 hours a day and come out just a little bit hungry, but we got to figure all the time too. My kid ain't getting enough to eat. I can't think all the time. God damn it. It drives a man crazy. What John Steinbeck did here in this monologue, I think, was portray the trap that you get caught into. At first you're doing it for yourself, and then after a while you get caught up in a trap, or you're in a situation where you're kind of locked in and you have to work just because your family is in great need. But you have to recognize that that's a trap. Whether you can get out of it or not, it is a trap. And that's how suffering is perpetuated everywhere. And that's how people who are in power, and that's a very small fraction of everybody in the world, that's how they trap you. You know, they trap you in this little tiny box where you're just focused on getting what you want, and in that way they can easily control you instead of just thinking about, okay, how can we all benefit? And it's a hard cycle to break out of, because like Pa is saying, you know, his kids are starving, he has to feed them, but then the other guy saying, well, I'm just gonna take your job for less, and then you're gonna do the same thing. It's just gonna be an endless cycle of us each other screwing ourselves over, and the big man on top laughing, and they just don't know what to do. And it's a hard thing to figure out what to do. But I think the first thing is that we have to acknowledge that when we think on terms of just how can I help myself and the people directly involved with me, and I don't want to worry about anybody else, when we start thinking like that, because it's easy to start thinking like that, that's when things start to go bad. And that's when everybody suffers. So the protagonist of the story, Tom, is having a discussion with this other person. And I don't want to say who the other person is because I might spoil it for you. But this other person, they're discussing about wages. And this other person, he's organizing this strike against low wages for jobs. But Tom kind of debates with him. Here's what he says. We out of food, Tom said. Tonight we had meat. Not much, but we had it. Think Pa's gonna give up his meat on account of other fellas? And Rosa Shannon ought to get milk. Think Ma's gonna want to starve that baby just cause a bunch of fellas is yelling outside the gate? And the other person says, I wish they could see the only way they can depend on their meat. Oh, the hell. Get tired sometimes. God awful tired. And again, what we're seeing is this trap. And the person organizing the protest, the strike, he's just like, you know, I understand where you're coming from, Tom, and I don't have a solution. Like, yeah, I just wish you can see that you're screwing yourself over and your people over. But Tom's like, yeah, but we're starving. What can we do? And really, it's just, again, they're just in this trap, and they kind of don't know how to get out of it. But the trap is screwing everybody over. Here's another quote from the main character. It says, one time he went out in the wilderness to find his soul, and he found he didn't have no soul that was his'n. Says he found he just got a little piece of a great big soul. Says a wilderness ain't no good, because his little piece of a soul wasn't no good unless it was with the rest and was whole. But I know now a fella ain't no good alone. Here they get very spiritual with it. The main character's talking about how, he's realizing that rather than everybody having an individual soul, what's really the case in his mind is that there's a unified soul. Like there's just a soul that everybody shares, and each individual person has a part of that soul. And together, once we realize that we're just unified, we're together as one, that's when we become better and we can better ourselves. But when we think of ourselves only on our terms, only as an individual, we're weak because we're not whole. We're just a small piece, a small fraction. And if everybody starts thinking like that, nobody benefits, because we're just kind of a fraction of who we really are, which is a whole. I can see why this book got banned, because it is a hard pill to swallow, basically. I mean, John Steinbeck is right, and you might disagree. I know a lot of people would even disagree with this even today, even to this day, because I know a lot of people out there who's like, the best thing to do, just take care of yourself. It's just too much. The world is too complicated. Problems on a global scale are too difficult to solve. The best you can do is just focus on you, your family, take care of your kids, take care of your wife or your husband, and just don't worry. Just focus on yourself, and that's the best we can do. But that whole attitude really is the problem. Really, that's the main issue. And I know that's very difficult for people to accept. And of course you're gonna see people, oh, you're a communist, oh, you're a socialist, you don't believe in capitalism. And it's not really about any of that. Really, it's just about, you gotta recognize that when we fall into that type of mindset, we begin to start hurting each other people indirectly. When we buy things that might be built somewhere in some foreign country by people who are disfranchised and are just getting taken advantage of, or things that we do as individuals, and we're not thinking about how these things affect other people. You have to open your mind. You have to think about, what I'm doing might benefit myself and the people directly related to me, but how many people are getting hurt by what I do? And you really got to start thinking really deeply about it, because it can be a long trail to follow, and society doesn't want you to think about those type of things, because they just want to make money, they want to have consumers, and they don't want you to think about those things. But really, and quite honestly, that's really why we have all the problems that we have. I think of a lot of modern issues when I read this book. I mean, take for example the whole thing that we're going through in America, universal health care, and the controversy behind that. Now, I gotta be careful here, because I might offend people. If we offend people, whatever. I'm just trying to get to the truth and the meaning behind stuff. Our president, he created this thing, a system for universal health care. It had a lot of bumps. It had a lot of hiccups, and a lot of people think it's a failure. A lot of people are like, think it's not a failure, but whether or not it's a failure or not, I just support the fact that at least the president is trying to focus on a problem that's universal. Now, he might not have done it correctly, but at least he's trying to do something about it. What I don't like is this talk about, he did it, the president, he did it wrong, and this is a bad way of doing it. And then, okay, so what's your idea? What's your solution to the problem? Because I mean, it is a problem. You know, there's a lot of people out there who do not have health care, and the whole idea that, oh well, you know, I have health care, and you know, this system messes up my health care. And it's like, do you even care about the people who don't have health care? Well, no, because they don't work, and they didn't work as hard as me to get health care. And whether or not they worked hard to get health care or not, I'm sure a lot of people didn't, and you know, a lot of people do. A lot of people, I mean, really what you gotta recognize is that the fact that everybody doesn't have access to health care hurts all of us. You know, everybody suffers, even the people that do have health care. We are actually suffering as well, and we have to acknowledge that. We gotta recognize that when not everybody has equal access to opportunity or happiness, or when everybody doesn't have a fair shot, even the people on top suffer. You know, everybody suffers. We can't move forward. So we need to focus on how do we help everybody, and not just focus on me, myself, and I, and just my direct family or friends or my community. We got to focus on the whole country, and not just the whole country, the whole world. I know that's hard to accept, and like, oh well, you know, now I mean, that's very difficult. How are you going to focus on the world's problems and this and that and the other thing? I don't know. You know, I'm like Casey and the guy. You know, it's like, I don't know what to do. I'm just tired. You know, but quite frankly, I mean, we're going to have to do that to solve the problems that exist in our world. You know, we got to start thinking in terms of on a universal scale. I mean, that's the only way we're going to figure out solutions to the problem. We're not going to solve these problems by just focusing on little tiny spheres of influence and just focusing on the individual, and that really does not solve the problem. And that's really what the Grapes of Wrath is all about, in my opinion. Is about the problem lies in when we focus too much on the individual rather than the collective. And you might call that communist, social, or you might give it all these negative connotations, but it's the truth, and the truth is hard to swallow. And I see why it got banned. I see why this good book got banned, because it's speaking the truth, and not a lot of people like the truth. Take a chance on the Grapes of Wrath. You never know, you might like it. I didn't think it was boring. I thought it was great. I thought it presented some good themes. It's also well written, which I really like about it as well. This is The Black Ponder. I'm Neil Trotter. I'll see you next time.